Old Sergeant Elias Thorne sat on his porch in Oklahoma. A glass of bourbon stood nearby, and in his weathered hands he held a faded, tattered photograph. It showed a young man with a face smeared in grease standing next to an M48 Patton tank. Painted in white on the barrel were the words, "Steel Mamba." "You're asking what it was like?" he croaked, looking at the young journalist. "It wasn't like the movies. It smelled of diesel, rotting leaves, and a kind of fear that gets under your fingernails." 1968, Quang Tri province. The sun in Vietnam didn't shine. It pressed. It was liquid and sticky. Elias felt the sweat pooling under his headset, mixing with the dust. His tank, a 50-ton beast, clattered through the dense undergrowth like an angry elephant. "Sammy, stay sharp," Elias barked into the intercom. "Watch the left sector. Those gooks can rise out of a puddle if they have to." Sammy, an 18-year-old kid from Michigan, just nodded. He was the loader. His eyes still held the terror from yesterday's ambush where they lost Tank 2. Nothing was left of it but a charred skeleton. "Commander, movement ahead," the gunner, Professor, cut through the engine roar. Elias pressed his face to the periscope. The jungle looked still, but it was a lie. Suddenly, a flash erupted from the greenery. "RPG, short stop, gun right." The tank lurched. A heat round hissed inches above the turret, shearing the top off a palm tree. The steel Mamba answered instantly. The 90mm cannon spat fire, and 100 yards ahead, the jungle turned into a chaotic mess of splinters and flame.
Night in the Vietnamese jungle is never quiet. It is filled with the screech of cicadas and the rustle of leaves that could mean the wind or careful footsteps. For the crew of the Steel Mamba, this night was a test of nerves, not metal. The tank was stuck in a deep crater from a command-detonated mine, tilting heavily to the left. The left track was shredded like old film. Inside, the heat was stifling. The ventilation had failed, and the air, thick with oil, cordite, and human sweat, was becoming unbearable. "Commander, I hear them," Sammy whispered. He sat on the turret floor, clutching his M3 grease gun. "They're scratching against the hull, like rats." Elias looked through the night vision periscope. The screen flickered with a faint green light. He saw shadows moving, figures in straw hats flitted near the front road wheels. "They want to drop a grenade down the barrel or hit the engine deck," Elias said softly. "Professor, stay on the coax. Short bursts. Don't let them get close." Suddenly, something clinked against the armor. Again. Magnetic mines. "Now!" Elias roared. The coaxial M60 machine gun roared to life. Tracers cut through the dark, illuminating figures in black pajamas scattering from the tank. The Mamba snarled, chewing the surrounding brush into toothpicks. But there were too many of them. One Vietnamese soldier lunged toward the turret with a thermite charge. If he placed it on the turret ring, the crew would be cooked alive in seconds. Sammy didn't wait. He threw open the loader's hatch. "Sammy! No! Get back!" Elias screamed, reaching for the boy's belt. Too late. Sammy leaned out, emptying his grease gun into the saboteur. The man fell, but a return volley from an AK-47 caught Sammy in the chest. He slumped back into the tank, falling into Elias's arms. Sammy, breathe, kid." Elias pressed his palm to the boy's chest, but the hot blood surged through his fingers. Sammy's eyes glazed over, reflecting the dim emergency lights of the tank. February 1968. The city of Huế had become a mangled skeleton. The jungle was gone, replaced by ruined palaces and bombed-out neighborhoods. The Steel Mamba crawled through narrow streets, its tracks crushing bricks and the remnants of shattered lives. Elias Thorne was no longer the man who had arrived a year ago. His eyes were hollow. Replacing Sammy was a new kid, Junior.
terrified and silent. "Commander, we're pinned," Professor hissed. "An RPG could come from any window." A squad of Marines suddenly appeared from behind a corner, hugging the walls to escape sniper fire. A young lieutenant with a bloodied bandage across his face climbed onto the tank and pounded on the hatch. "Sergeant," he yelled as Elias opened up, "there's a machine gun nest in that building across the square. They're mowing my boys down. Level that wall or we're all dead." Elias looked through the sights. The building was an old school. Through the dust, he saw the muzzle flashes from the second floor. But he saw something else. In the basement, huddled behind shattered windows, were civilians, women, old men, and children. "There are people in there, Lieutenant," Elias shouted back. "There's the enemy," the officer screamed, gesturing toward his fallen men. "If you don't fire, an RPG will come out of that window and burn your tank to hell. It's them or us." Elias turned back into the turret. Professor had the lay. Junior held a high explosive shell ready. "Waiting for your command, Sergeant." Professor's voice was dry, devoid of emotion. He wanted to live, too. Elias closed his eyes for a second. He remembered Sammy. He remembered his home. And he realized that if he gave this order, he would never truly go home. His body might, but his soul would remain under the rubble of that school in Huế. "Fire," he whispered. The tank bucked. A horrific roar tore the air. The wall of the building simply vanished into a cloud of red dust and fire. The machine gun fire stopped. The Marines charged forward with a victory cry. Epilogue. Old Elias Thorne finished his bourbon. The sun was setting, painting the Oklahoma sky a deep, bloody red, the same color as the walls of that school in Huế. "You know, kid, you don't become a hero in war. You just become a man who survived at the cost of someone else." He stood up, leaning heavily on his cane. On the table lay the photo of a young, smiling tanker who didn't yet know that the hardest battle is the one you fight with yourself long after the last shot has faded.